This is the new Radiomaster MT12. Now, I know my review of this radio is coming out later than everyone else's. That is largely because I was away at the time this radio was released. I received it a little bit later, but more than that, I wanted to put it through some proper testing before putting out a video. Now, today, we're going to be taking a look at this radio. I know I'm not someone that covers surface gear a lot. However, what I have done quite a bit of in the past is building Rovers, and today we're going to be testing this radio with this monstrosity here, which was my Ardra Rover, but we've now converted it for use with ExpressLRS, but we've also got DJI Digital FPV on board with a gimbal, and we're going to be taking it for a bit of a wander. Before we do that though, we're going to take a closer look at the MT12 itself, walk you through its features and capabilities. We're going to tear it down, and then we will get it out and about. Now, just to be crystal clear up front, Radiomaster did send me this radio for free. However, they have not paid me to make this video. They have not seen this video before it's been published. And as always, my thoughts are entirely my own. Now, like many of the recent radios Radiomaster have released, they offer the MT12 with this nice soft case, which just offers some additional protection. This one, though, is quite interesting because it's got two layers. In the top, if I unzip it, you will find the radio itself, which we'll take a closer look at in a minute. Then you've got that mesh area up there with some additional accessories in. But if I flip it over, on the back side is a compartment that allows you to store some extra stuff, but they also put in here some accessories as well, which I will talk about a little bit more later on in the video. Now, the MT12 is Radiomaster's first real push into a ground-based radio. And what's really interesting about this handset is that it is based on EdgeTX, and we will talk about that more later on, like many of the radios we used to from the air side of things, and they've brought that functionality into their first proper ground-based solution. Now, this radio is designed for either cars, rovers, boats, or any other ground-based type radio. I am not an expert by any means on ground radios. I've used a few of them. Most of the ones I've used are fairly cheap and have very little functionality. This is on a completely different level to the ones that I have used in the past, and I'm going to be talking about this from my personal perspective of what I would want from a ground-based radio, but not really comparing it to any others because I simply don't have the experience with others to be able to do that for you. Okay, so to walk you around the radio, now, as I've mentioned, this is an EdgeTX-based handset. Now, that can be quite an unusual thing for a ground-based radio. However, the great thing about this is for anyone who has used the air-based EdgeTX units or OpenTX, everything will be very familiar. Now, I'm not going to go into the great depth of EdgeTX at this point, but I will touch on it a bit more later on in the video. It has all of the usual controls you'd expect to find. So we've got our system, our model, our page forward and back buttons. We've got our return, our telemetry, as well as our CNC rotary button and a power button. Now, it has all of the usual menu options that you would expect to find in EdgeTX, so I can go into the model settings and you can see it's all of the usual stuff. Again, as I've said, we'll concentrate on that side of things a bit more later on. Now, moving you around the rest of the radio, starting with the trigger. Now, this is obviously located underneath here. The nice thing about this is that it is adjustable position, so you can set it to what position you want it for your specific finger length. It is a Hall effect sensor on the trigger. It obviously gives us forward and reverse depending on what you want to set it up for, and it has bearings as well and offers a really nice smooth range. You've then also got tension adjustment on this too, and as I've said, you can adjust the reach on this simply by undoing that screw, moving it forward and back. We've then got our steering control on the side here. Again, this is a bearing Hall effect sensor. This allows you to set your steering. You can also adjust the tension on this as well. Comes quite loose as standard, but not too loose. To be honest, I think that's about perfect for me, and it has this nice foam grip around the sides. Looking around the rest of the radio, you then have lots of trims and adjustments. So all the way around the outside of the steering, you have 4 trims. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 there, which allow you to set the trim for the throttle, the steering, or any other function you want on the radio. There is also an SA button underneath. This is a 3-position switch that allows you to set it for something like a mode if you wanted to. We've then got two potentiometers, P1 and P2 over here. These are standard potentiometers that you can simply rotate and adjust, and again, map them to whatever function you want. Flipping it over, there is an SB button located just under there. You can see there, so you can actually get to that with your thumb if you're left-handed like me, or if you're right-handed, you can do it the other way. We've then got another trim, T5, located here, as well as an SC button. That is a momentary button just like SB that is located there. And then there's another momentary button located here on the back of the radio next to the USB port that you can press as well. There is also the option for adding additional controls onto the bottom plate down here. Now, included with the kit, they will give you two additional plates. That replaces this plate here, which comes fitted to the radio as standard. This actually unclips from inside. You take the bottom of the radio off where the batteries are located. We'll take a look at that in a minute. And then you can replace that. There you go. You can see I managed to unclip it quite easily. And there are two options that they give you with it. The first option you have for this is this little board which has two position switches on. This allows you just to have some additional standard switch functionality. But they also include this, which adds another Joy-Con joystick down the bottom that allows you to have your normal forward, back, left, right controls. There is a center push on this, but that isn't working in the software that I've tested at this moment in time. And the nice thing about this is that it just gives you some additional functionality. For instance, if you wanted to have something like a gimbal on your unit that you wanted to move around separately. Now, I've done some checks on this, and whilst this knob and the trigger are Hall effect sensors, this is not. It is a standard potentiometer, but it does look very similar to the usual Joy-Con ones that you get online, and you might be able to replace that with a Hall effect one if you wanted to. Alongside that replaceable bay at the bottom, there is also an option to mount an external module bay on the top here. Under this little bulge, we can lift this connection off, and this shows us a little header, and in there you can plug this included panel onto the top, and this allows you to mount a nano module onto this radio as well. Now, the version I've got here is the ExpressLRS edition, but if you wanted to add another module with the likes of Crossfire, or you wanted to use a higher power ExpressLRS module, such as the Ranger, which has up to 1 watt of output, you could mount that onto there as well. Now, just looking around the rest of the radio, on the back, you'll find a nice metal lanyard hoop or a strap hoop, which you can attach there. On the front, we have the built-in antenna. This is actually rotatable, so you can have it horizontal, or you can rotate it vertically like that, giving you the dual polarizations. You can see that there are LEDs built into the radio as well, so you can see there's a flashing one down there, which is controllable in the software. And then if we go underneath, you can see the battery bay door, and this radio comes fitted with a standard 18650 mount for the batteries. If we actually just lift this out, you will see that there is a board down there with a connection in. That is where you would plug in the additional options that I showed you earlier that go on the top here. You also have that option of releasing that bottom panel from down here as well. And then you have your battery input with the included holder for the 18650s, which simply plugs in down there. Now, to replace this bottom panel and put on whatever option you want to do, today we're going to use the little Joy-Con. You can simply push it from the inside and unclip it. You then can just pop the cable through. That then will go through the hole, clip that back in place just like that, and then you simply need to take the wire and plug this into that PCB under there. There's a nice area then underneath to tuck any spare cable into, and then you can simply plug back in your battery holder and place the batteries back in the bottom of the radio just like that. Slide the bottom on, and then you're ready to go. Now, on this radio, you do have a couple of I/O ports. We have a USB-C port on the back here for charging. This supports the QC 3.0 fast charging protocol up to 2 amp. And then on this side, under this little cover down here, we have our additional I/O. So we have our DSC port, a USB-C port for getting to that EdgeTX operating system, allowing you to use it for a trainer on your computer or just doing the programming. We've got our micro SD card slot, a 3.5 5mm headphone slot, as well as an aux port down here as well. And you can also see on the radio on this side, there are some additional mounting lugs over here. So if you did want to bolt on any additional accessories, you absolutely can. Now, just covering a few other things with regards to ergonomics on this radio, there is this rubber grip on the back here. It's actually quite subtle. I didn't actually think it was rubber at first, but it's definitely a grippy material. The front part is definitely plastic, as is the housing of the rest of the radio, but this back section that goes from down here is definitely rubberized, quite nice on the hand. We've then got this foam piece that goes over the top of the wheel on the side. Again, really nice and grippy, and the throttle is quite nice. No issues with getting my quite big finger in there at all. And again, as I've said already, it's really nice that you can adjust that screw and move the position forward and back depending on the kind of reach that you've got in your finger. Before we move on to the teardown, I just want to talk about the software and the RF system. This radio is available in two versions. The one I've got here, which is the ExpressLRS edition, which supports up to 250 milliwatts of output max or 100 milliwatts in LBT mode. It is also available in a 4-in-1 version as well, if you want that. The great thing about this radio, though, is you're not limited with regards to the radio system because it accepts an external nano bay module as well, which is a complete game changer compared to many other ground-based radios. If you buy it in ExpressLRS, you're not limited to that. You can put whatever module you want on there, and that stands for the 4-in-1 as well, as long as it's compatible with the EdgeTX operating system. The real amazing thing with what Radiomaster are doing here is bringing all of that functionality air-based users are used to ground-based users, which means you can go out and get yourself a crossfire module if you want one, or something like the Ranger Nano, which has up to 1 watt of RF output, and you can then simply clip that on and use that rather than the internal radio. In theory, with some modification, and I will just stress this module will not fit out the box, you could even fit the big Ranger module on with a bit of playing, allowing up to 2 watts of RF output for ground use as well, which is beyond anything most ground users have had capability of before. Alongside ExpressLRS, we then have the EdgeTX operating system. Now, for those who've never used it, it can seem a little bit daunting at first, but there is pretty much nothing that you can't do on this radio with regards to programmability, and add in all of the options that you've got with the modules. It is going to make this one radio for pretty much every option that you've got. ExpressLRS is going to give you some of the best range available on the market, as well as some of the cheapest receiver options available out there as well. If you don't use ExpressLRS on your gear already, you can buy receivers for this radio for as little as $10, and that can give you in the year 30 plus kilometers of range. Obviously, ground-based solutions are going to differ, but it is probably going to be beyond anything that you've got on any existing system. Now, alongside this radio, Radiomaster have also released some of their own dedicated ground-based receivers as well. Now, there are two versions of these receivers. We have the ER5CI and the ER5C version 2. Now, they offer pretty much the same functionality, apart from the I has a built-in ceramic antenna. You can see on this version 2, there's an external antenna whip coming out the top. This has nothing, and that is because it's got that antenna built in. Obviously, this one is going to offer you the better overall range, but this one is going to be a bit easier to install. So it depends what use case you've got, will depend on what receiver you want to choose. Now, they both offer 5 PWM ports. They have a dedicated voltage input, which is supported on telemetry data as well, which means it will give you the voltage that you're seeing on the rail. But they both also have a dedicated voltage input port as well, that one there and that one there, and they supply cables with these in the packet, and that allows you to directly connect it to your battery, allowing you to get your battery voltage telemetry across ExpressLRS directly into your radio, allowing you to be able to monitor your voltage without any additional hardware. Now, the real nice thing about these receivers, just like many of the others from Radiomaster, is they do have a built-in TCXO, which is a temperature compensated crystal oscillator, which means they're going to give you the best possible performance. They support updates via Wi-Fi and overall have all of the usual functionality that you would expect from an ExpressLRS receiver. They're just based on PWM. Next, we're going to tear the radio down. I'm just going to give you a bit of an overview how it is inside. I had to adjust the lighting for this bit of the video because it was quite hard to show you this because it was quite black. So my hands and stuff are overexposed. I do apologize for that, but it was the best way of being able to show you inside the radio because it is pretty much all black. And then we will move on to getting this out and about. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is a quick teardown. Now, I'm a little bit nervous on this one because I'm not exactly sure how it comes apart. Now, we do have this rubber grip on the back that does unclip from that side there. That then reveals some screws down the side. We've got some screws down here as well. So what we're going to do is get the battery out now as two. So we don't want that in place. And then we'll slowly work through. Now, interesting, there are a few bits of this that do look like they'll come off separately. So I'm going to start with these two here and see how these come out and see if that actually releases this part of the remote on the side. It looks like it's put together in multiple sections. Sorry if my hands are whiting out there. I've jacked the brightness up just so you can see the radio a little bit better. There we go. Oh, look at that. That actually unclips. And then there's a ribbon cable that goes through from there onto that side there. So we're going to need to be very careful with that. Pop that one out. You can then see in there is the main PCB for the radio. That must be our button that's on the bottom there. There it is. So that pushes up against that button that is on the PCB. This is obviously where we've got our two potentiometers as well as our Hall effect steering controller. And then we've got our switches all around the sides. I'm not going to tear this down into any more detail. I don't think there's any great need to do that at this point, but you can see that comes apart like that. This has now freed up inside for me to be able to see what is in there. We've got a number of PCBs actually. We've got this one bottom board where we can see our main ARM chipset is down the bottom there. We can then see the RF board on the top of that. And then there's another board down there where the LCD is. Now, the next thing we're going to need to do is likely split the controller in half. So we'll start undoing some of these other screws for that. I don't think this is going to be as easy to take apart as something like the box or one of the other traditional radios. This is definitely made in two halves, and as such, that's what keeps everything in place. I suspect what we'll find with this is once we undo all of these screws, we'll start to find it wanting to come apart, and all of those boards will sort of fall out of where they're located and not stay where they were. We've got a number of screws down in the handle. We've got the two in the bottom down there. Our serial number sticker at the front is actually going to be holding that together. So we're going to want to undo him. That's our warranty void sticker. Now we're starting to see the shell come apart. There we go. Oh, that cover has lifted off. So when you undo those two, that cover comes free. And again, you can see the other side of that PCB in there. That's nice and easy to get to. Now I think we need to just keep going. There is a board at the back here, interestingly. Actually, there's multiple boards in the bottom here. So I'm not sure how this one comes apart yet. Let's just have a look around where this USB-C port is, it feels like it wants to be held together. So my bets are this button needs to pop off before we go any further. I was right. There we go. So there we go. That splits the shell. And then we will start to see this side come off. Did we undo that one down in there? We did. I think we'll then see this top piece release as well. We'll then see our top board pop free. Oh, there's another 2 screws on the front here I've missed. There are screws everywhere on this radio. Just get them out. Some more of those ones there. There we go. There we go. Then this half is now wanting to come apart. We have a couple of wires in there at the bottom. So that is for that LED board on the other side. Let me just free that. I'm going to probably stop there, but what I am going to do is just give you an overview of what we can see now inside. So we've got this main top board here on the back of the LCD panel with the buttons. That goes to a ribbon cable down there, which you can unclip. You've then got our trigger mechanism there with our Hall effect sensor on it. You can see that moving in and out there. We've then got the main PCB down the bottom there. Another board down here, which is bringing the I/O down the center. And then you've got an LED bar, obviously, on the front of it there for color changing. And then at the bottom, you've got another I/O down there for our USB-C on the back for charging. Our back power button as well as our LED bars are down the side. There are quite a lot of boards in this radio. If we actually count them, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 just in that main part of the radio, let alone what we've got in this other thing here. Overall, it seems very well put together. I got no complaints on how it looks from an assembly point of view. It certainly isn't the easiest radio to get apart, and it's not one you're really going to want to take apart, but it's also not really one you'd need to either. If you did need to replace the trigger mechanism, fairly straightforward. Just follow what I've done here. If you did need to replace anything else, obviously it's going to be a bit more fiddly than something like an air radio with just the back cover comes off like on the Boxer. But overall, Radiomaster have done a nice job of packaging everything in here. Next, I'm going to share with you some of my footage from testing this remote on my Rover. Now, this is a bit of a Frankenstein of a build that I've done over the last few years. It is actually based on Ardra. I've just modified it for this video to take PWM input directly. Now, I've also put together a bit of a Frankenstein pan and tilt mechanism for the DJI digital FPV system. I've basically cable tied on a Vista at the front. We've got an antenna mounted on top of the camera here, and we have a Caddx Nebula Pro there as well. And what we're going to do then is record the footage from this directly onto my DJI FPV goggles, and that's what I'm going to be sharing with you next. Now, to demonstrate this, what we have have is a Nebula Pro attached to a Vista, and I'm recording this on a set of V2 goggles. We then have this sort of camera servo gimbal which allows me to pan and tilt it, and I'll look around with the joystick on the bottom of the MT12, that little Joy-Con one, that's going to allow me to move it around separately compared to the other controls on the RC, and then I'm controlling the Rover simply via the normal PWM channels. Now there's quite a bit of footage I'm just going to let play off you with some music, and then I'll come back to you at the end and share with you my thoughts on the radio. Okay, so before I share with you my thoughts, I just want to talk about price. The MT12, as you've seen it here today with the accessories, the case, the modules for the bottom, either the switches or the Joy-Con, is available for $129.99. That's either the ExpressLRS edition or the 4-in-1 edition. It is a pre-order at the point of me making this video, and that is the price that Radiomaster have set it for. And if you're interested in getting one, there will be a link to it in the description. Now, I can't say if I think that price is good or bad compared to other ground-based radios. What I'm going to simply say is I think that's a lot of radio for the money, considering what Radiomaster have had to do here. There is clearly a very big bill of materials on this radio, many boards in there, lots of nice features, Hall effect sensors where we would like to have them, nice large screen, all these little additional accessories as well. And I think Radiomaster are definitely being aggressive with that price point, especially for a new radio market that they are entering into. Okay, so to share with you my thoughts on the MT12. Now, just to be crystal clear again up front, I am not an expert on ground-based radios. This radio was also sent to me for free by Radiomaster, although that doesn't change my opinion. I'm just going to share with you what I think about it based on what I found. Now, I think this is a really great radio, but I'm coming from this from a perspective of it has everything that I would want in a radio if I was looking for a ground-based one. I use ExpressLRS. I'm used to EdgeTX, OpenTX. It has a module bay. It ticks all of the boxes that I would want in a ground-based solution while still having what I'm used to having in my other radios. I can't fault the radio in any way. I've got no complaints over it at all. It's not particularly heavy. It's not the lightest, but it's not the heaviest. It's got good battery life based on those 18650 cells, but you can put a bigger battery in there if you want to. It's got Hall effect sensors. Everything's nice and smooth. The switches feel good. Literally, there's nothing I would say I want on this radio that isn't on there. But if you have seen something like that, please do let me know in the comments section, because I would really be interested in your thoughts. I think the price point on this, $130, is fantastic. Radiomaster are definitely being really aggressive on it. And what I can say is it is really nice to use on things like Rovers. I'm going to be using it a lot more in the future. What really impressed me actually on this radio was the ExpressLRS performance. It easily outdid DJI, as we would expect. If you've seen in my footage, we started to get the DJI system break down as I was coming back around the outside of the car park, whereas ExpressLRS was perfect. I never got a warning. I never got a message. It just ticked along as you would expect it to. Now, about the only things I could say that could be improved on this radio is maybe you would prefer a Hall effect Joy-Con at the bottom. Looking at that sensor, you may be able to swap that out for one of the ones that is available on the likes of Amazon or eBay. Looks very similar to the type of switches that you do see on the Nintendo Switches and others, so I think it is possible to swap out. And it would be great to see a mod to be able to put that large Ranger module on the top here to get up to that 2 watts of RF output. Don't get me wrong, not everyone's going to want to do that, but there are some people who are going to want that absolute max power for their ground-based solutions. There's not really anything stopping you doing it. I think it's just going to need a bit of a 3D print modification that's going to allow it to fit. Other than that, I think Radiomaster have done a fantastic job, and you're going to see a bit more from me on this radio in the future. And as I've already said, there will be a link to it below in the description. Now, I'm really interested in knowing what you think about this radio. Please do let me know in the comment section. As I said at the start, this one took a lot longer to do than some of the others, simply because I wanted to make sure I had enough experience on this radio before telling you what I think. I didn't just want to phone this one in and tell you, here it is, here's the features, and if you want it, go buy it. I wanted to use the radio, test the radio, to be able to share with you my thoughts. Zero complaints, but if there's anything I've missed, put it in the comment section, and hopefully then we can all learn. Anyway, that's it from me on this one. A big thank you to Radiomaster for sending it over. As I've said, if you're interested in getting one, link below. Stay safe. I will speak to you soon.